Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be diving into the new Super Nudes collection from Miss Charlotte Tilbury. You guys know that Charlotte Tilbury is one of my favorite brands and I can never resist picking up new products that she launches. So in this video, we're going to focus on the face palette and the eye palette. She also launched 5 new nude lipsticks in this collection, but I did not order them. I ordered this during the early access, and on the early access, there was only 4 of the Matte Revolution lipsticks available. The Kissing formula wasn't available when I ordered this. She has 4 in the Matte Revolution, and then she has 1 in the Kissing formula, which is called Runway Royalty, and that was the one I wanted. So I thought, well, I'll wait till that's in stock and I'll order it. So I have ordered the Runway Royalty, and I also ordered 1 shade in the Matte Revolution, which I picked up the Cover Star. So when those arrive next week, I will probably throw them in like a full face of Get Ready With Me or something like that. I won't dedicate a video just to those 2 lipsticks. She also launched a nude eyeliner, which is like a double-ended eyeliner that has a nude brown and I think like just a nude. So it's a double-ended, which I should have picked that up, but I really don't need it. I'm kind of in love with the Victoria Beckham eyeliner and I've just been using it nonstop, so I decided not to pick that up either. So basically in this video we're just going to be talking all about the palette for the face and the palette for the eye. So let's jump right into it. First thing we have here is called the Nudegasm face palette. This retails for $75. She's calling this a universal palette. In my opinion, it's not. We should have had more shades. There should have been more palettes to cover more skin tones. That's my opinion. But if you guys are new to my channel and you're curious about my skin tone, I am right now like more of a medium to tan. I will leave a full list in the description box down below of popular foundations out on the market and what shades I wear in those foundations, so that you guys can use my skin shade as a reference in case you guys are more medium to tan. So the description on this face palette, it is described as a nude makeup palette with sculpting and glowing shades to beautify your cheeks and eyes for a sun-kissed runway ready super glow. So it is supposed to be a bronze sculpt and glow all in one. All right, well, here's the thing. So this right here is obviously a highlighter. This is for the cheek, for a blush. And then these 2 are the sculpting shades. For me being medium to tan, this is not even going to work on my face. In fact, I didn't even use it on my face. I could use this in the crease, absolutely. I didn't today only because I used the Super Nudes palette in case you guys wanted to know, you know, how I feel about this. I've had this in my collection for a while and I wanted to do a tutorial on it. I did end up using this shade. Now, the first application, I used it as a bronzer because I wanted to see if it would bronze up the skin. Not really, it's not that warm, so it's not like the other palettes where her bronzers are a little bit warmer. This is definitely a cool tone bronzer, and it's got a gray base to it, but I wanted to see what it would look like. So I went ahead and wiped off my makeup right along here, and then I applied that color just as a contour so that you guys could see that applied as a bronzer and a contour. And personally, in my opinion, based on my skin tone, that shade is definitely more for contour, not a bronzer. But that's coming from somebody that prefers a warm tone bronzer. And then the next product that we have from Miss Charlotte Tilbury is this. This is called the Super Nudes Easy Eye Palette. Now, I've had this in my collection for a while. This retails for $57, and I've actually really enjoyed this palette. I don't think it's for everyone. It's definitely a cream to powder type of formula where it's a creamy matte. It's not a traditional matte formula, and it has a shine to it that kind of gives a shine to the crease, but look how beautiful it swatches. If you don't like a creamy matte, then you won't like this because this is definitely a creamy matte. You do get a little bit of fallout. When I first used it, I never really got a lot of fallout, but as I've continued to use it, I've definitely received a little bit of fallout, so kind of keep that in mind. Even though this is a creamy matte formula, you will get fallout. So that's it for the information on what we're talking about in today's video. Let's go ahead and jump into the application of both of these products, and then I will swatch this face palette and the eye palette next to a bunch of other products that I have in my collection, so you guys can see how these shades compare. Then once we get through the swatches and comparisons, of course, then I will get into my final thoughts. So without further ado, let's get right into the video. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up the face palette. Okay, so this is the face of it. I love this. This is so pretty. I just think it's pretty. So this is what the palette looks like. There we go. This is what the palette looks like. So this shade right here is called the Super Glow. This is called the Multi Glow. This right here is the Super Sculpt, and this is the Soft Sculpt. I don't think I'll be able to use the Soft Sculpt. I think it might just be too gray. It has a really gray base to it, and yeah, I think I'm going to use this one. So I'm going to grab the Wayne Goss #1 brush, and I'm going to go into the Super Sculpt. So this side is done, and I did have to build this up quite a bit to achieve what I have on right now. But it does build, it does. But I just wouldn't recommend building it too much because because it has a little bit of a gray tone, you don't want it to get muddy. So I would just be careful building this too much. This is more of a wispier brush where the bristles are much longer, and you know, I kind of use this to kind of, you know, make circular motions and kind of blend it in. But let's see what it'll do if we use something like this where it's a little bit more stiff. This is the Refer number 24. I want to find a way to make it work without having to add that much product. So let's try a stiff brush on this side. Stiff brush builds it so much quicker, which is to be expected. But you know, I'm not the biggest fan of gray bronzers, so this one's a kind of a I just don't know. Okay, let's move on to the blush. That's what that looks like. So I'm gonna take the Sonia G detailed brush from the Lotus set, and I'm just gonna pick some up. I'm gonna tap off and just apply some right here on the cheek. It definitely has a nice glow to it, as you can see. I don't know if you guys can see this dark patch that I have attached really weird right here in this area. I don't know if it's showing up on camera, but I can see this like shape right here where it's darker. So I'm going to take this brush from the Wayne Goss Artistry set. I'm going to grab the Super Glow up here and just put that on. Oh, that's pretty. All right, that's pretty. I think the blush and the highlight is really pretty. I'm just not quite feeling these sculpting products. So I am back. I went ahead and wiped off this portion of my makeup and put my foundation back on. But I think I'm going to go ahead and powder this because I don't always like putting powder contour over top of fresh foundation. I always struggle with powder contour anyway, but putting it on with something like this, I'm a little bit nervous about. So I'm going to powder just a little bit and kind of give me something to buff over top of so that this contour doesn't stick straight to the foundation. Okay, so I've wiped off this brush, but I'm going to use this for this contour. This is the detail brush from Sonia G in the Lotus collection. And this is shaped perfectly, and it's long and it's more wispy. And I feel like I can get a more detailed application with this. So I am going to go ahead and grab this shade, and I'm just going to bring it along here. So I went ahead and contoured with this, and this is a pretty contour. Because of this texture, you can see it's got a shine to it, so it is much creamier than a traditional powder formula. This is definitely, in my opinion, way better as a contour than a bronzer. For those that were curious, you're going to want to use this as a contour. So I'm going to wipe the brush off, and I'm going to go ahead and reapply the blush. Okay, now for me, this blush is pretty, but in these lights it shows up, but I have a feeling if I like went outside or something, this blush doesn't have enough depth in my opinion. So this would be a really pretty blush topper. Like if I had a blush underneath it and then put this over top, then I could see that probably working better for my complexion than wearing it alone. Even though it does look really pretty on camera and very soft, it is, but I have to build it up quite a bit to get this pigment. If I went in with like a peach-based matte blush and then went over top of it with this, that would probably be the best way to use that blush on my complexion. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and reapply the highlighter. We're going to go ahead and move on to the Super Nudes palette. This is called the Super Nudes Easy Eye Palette. I've had this for a while and I've used it so many times. This is a very, very soft, buttery type of texture in the eyeshadows. This formula kind of reminds me of the cream to powder formula from Natasha Denona. This is much easier for me to use than the cream to powder formula from Natasha Denona. For some reason, that cream to powder formula is so hard for me to use. I don't know why, but I actually really like this palette. I've used it many times. It works really well. This is a very workable matte black because it is such a creamy formula. So I have always really enjoyed this palette. It seems like it's a hit and miss. Like some people love it and some people don't. It's a cream to matte. I mean, you can see the texture. It is definitely got some creaminess to it, but it's super pigmented and I've always just had such a great time using it. So what I'm going to first do is I'm going to grab my Smith 253 brush and I'm going to go into the middle shade right here. So this just kind of brightened up the eye. You can kind of tell the difference between these two. Now I'm going to grab the soft definer brush from Sonia G from the Lotus set. And I'm going to go into this shade right here. Then I'm going to go to the shade right next to it, this shade right here. Keep this closer to the brow bone, kind of just defining that a little bit. But it's got great pigment. As you can see, it's super easy to blend. It's a softer pigment. What I also like about this is that it gives the crease a little bit of a shine. So like if I tip my head, it's not like a traditional matte formula where it's more drier. This one is a creamy formula, so it kind of gives a little bit of a shine here in the crease. I'm going to take a smudge brush. This one is from BK Beauty. This is the 204. And I'm going to bring that shade all underneath the lower lash line, but keeping it really close to the lash line. Now I'm going to take a flat definer. This is the E15 from Sigma. And I'm going to go into this dark brown right here. And I'm going to just kind of focus this here on the outer corner. I'm just going to kind of deepen up the outer corner with that dark brown. Also bringing it right here on the lower lash line right there. I'm going to take the flat definer from Sigma and I'm going to grab this black right here. I'm going to basically create a little bit of dimension and a little bit of a wing with this. So I'm going to use my lower lash line as my guide for my wing. So I'm going to take the brush and I put it right here against the lower lash line and I just kind of bring it up like that. Using the lower lash line as a guide is so helpful when creating a wing. For me anyway, because I'm not the biggest fan of really strong wings. Every time I do a really strong wing, it never works out. So using the lower lash line as the guide to kind of create the wing and where it's supposed to kind of be, it kind of lifts up the eye, but it's not a super dramatic wing. So I'm going to just kind of fill it in to where and connect it here on the upper. Okay, then I'm going to go back to that smudge brush and I'm going to probably dip between these two, kind of picking up both of them. And then I'm going to go over this line right here just to kind of make it blended. So this is the final look using both of the palettes. We're going to go ahead and jump into the swatches and comparisons. I'm going to do a bunch of different comparisons for you so you guys can see how these compare to other products that are out on the market. And then we will get into my final thoughts and I will share my thoughts with you on both of these products. So I will see you guys then. Okay, so now that we've made it through those swatches and comparisons, which I hope those were helpful for you, let me go ahead and get into my final thoughts about this Nudegasm palette. First of all, let's just get this out of the way. This is not a universal palette. This is not going to work for a wide variety of skin tones. That's just kind of, it's pretty laughable in my opinion. This is for those who have light to light medium to medium skin tones. And that's it. Being that my skin tone, I am able to make this work. Like you can see the contour along my cheekbones and my forehead and stuff. I'm able to make this work, but I feel like if you're darker than I am, this is going to be absolutely pointless for you. Absolutely pointless. And it's kind of frustrating because I thought we were getting better. I thought we were like moving in the right direction when it came to Charlotte Tilbury and the brand. I thought we were moving in the right direction. You guys know I'm a huge fan of Charlotte Tilbury products. They're kind of my favorite brand. But when she launched the Glowgasm face palettes, she launched 2 of them. Yes, I still think we needed 3, but it was a step in the right direction. Even with the palettes that she just launched, the Blushed Beauty is for light to medium skin tones, and the Glowing Beauty is for medium to tan and darker skin tones. We still needed 1 more palette. I was hoping that we would get there, right? So yeah, so we got 2 in these, we got 2 in the Glowgasm, and then she launches the Nudegasm with 1 palette. I'm like, really? Okay, so now that we have that out of the way, this is the big elephant in the room that we all can agree on. 1 palette just isn't going to cut it. Okay, this palette is for those who have light to light medium to medium skin, okay? And you like a powder contour. This is a nice formula for a powder contour. I don't prefer powder contour. I prefer a cream. Cream's just easier for me. I'm not a big fan of powder, but out of all the powder contour formulas I've used, I like this formula because it does blend really easily. If you don't like to contour, let's just say that you just don't like it, it's not for you. If you have a light to light medium to medium skin tone, this can be used as a bronzer. You have to have the undertone where a gray cool tone bronzer looks good on you. I have a lot of friends who have a lighter complexion who prefer bronzers that are not so warm. So for those that like a cool tone bronzer, you might really like this as a bronzer. It might work really well on your complexion. And for her to say that this is universal palette, if you have a darker complexion, are these really going to show up in your crease? Absolutely not. You might be able to get this to show up in your crease if you had a light enough concealer or eyeshadow base to kind of brighten up your eyelid. But why would you want to spend $75 to just use these 2 on the face and these 2 in the crease? Like, it's kind of ridiculous, right? So bottom line, if you are darker than tan, I wouldn't even bother with this because this is just not going to work. It's much more cool toned because it is a contour palette. So just know that. If you were out there and you were looking at getting this palette, just know that these are both pretty cool toned. And it's not like her typical bronzers that we've been used to. For example, the Pretty Blushed Beauty, this is more of a warm tone bronzer. And also same goes for the Glowing Beauty. This is a more warm tone bronzer. Very buildable, very buttery, but it's warm toned. So this is a more cool tone gray base, as you could tell and see in the swatches. In the Glowgasm face palettes, she launched 2. This is the light. I did have the darker one, but I actually gave it to a friend of mine who has a darker complexion. She was wanting it and they were sold out, and it was kind of sitting in my collection and I wasn't using it, and I wanted to gift it to somebody that I knew would use it and love it, which she absolutely loves it. So I don't have it to compare this palette to that, and I apologize for that. But I don't understand why we had to have such similar shades here on the top. So this is a Lightgasm. These 2 shades are very similar. In fact, the highlighter is exactly the same shade. This shade right here is just a little bit lighter than this one in this palette. So if I had the darker palette, I would assume that this shade in the Nudegasm would probably be similar to the one that's in the darker palette of the Glowgasm. I don't know why we had to have 2 repeat shades that are so similar. So what I mean by is, here's the highlighter. I mean, I swatched these side by side, but here's the highlighter. They're pretty similar. The only difference between these two highlighters is the one from the Nudegasm, which is here on the top. It's a tad bit darker, just a tad. I think once you put it on the face, you're never going to know that they're not the same. They're very similar. They're that close. Now, as far as the blushes go, this is the Nudegasm. This is the Nudegasm, and this is the Glowgasm in the light. So yes, this is darker. I mean, I don't have the darker palette, so I can't say for sure, but I would suspect that they're very similar to this shade, that shade in that palette. So I just don't understand why she did that. I don't know. But anyway, overall, this palette is definitely very specific for that specific need. Based on my preference, on what I like, how I use makeup, my complexion, all of that, I wouldn't purchase this palette because I think it's a little pointless for me on a personal level. So this is very specific for a specific person. It's not universal for everyone. I'm just kind of overall bummed that there was not more than one palette. It just kind of, I don't get it. I just don't get it. Don't get it. Now, really quick about the palette, I actually do really like this palette, but I do feel like for those who don't really like a creamy matte formula, you probably won't like this. It's definitely not unique in any way, and as you saw in the swatches, it's very similar to other palettes. In fact, it's almost the exact same shades as the Desert Haze palette, the 4-pan quad from Charlotte Tilbury. These shades are in the Desert Haze palette, so if you have that 4-pan quad, you definitely don't need this. Even the Charlotte Tilbury Instant Look in the palette, which was just on sale on her website. The thing that you don't get is the black and this gray color, this gray taupe, but all 4 of these shades are in this Instant Look in an Eye palette. So typical Charlotte Tilbury, she's always got the same kind of color combinations for all of her different products. But so I like that palette. I do. I think it's a great palette, but I feel like it's only necessary if you're looking for those tones in a cream to matte formula that's more of a creamy matte. I feel like that would be the only reason why you would probably even want to buy that. But just know, even though that it is in the creamy matte formula, you will get some fallout. So just keep that in mind. Overall, I do really like the palette. I've had it for a while and I do really like it, but I end up only creating the same look with it. So, you know, there's that too. I don't know if that even is worth the $57. But anyway, it's a great palette, but I don't feel like it's going to be for everyone. I hope that this review was helpful, and I hope that those swatches were helpful. Sound out down below in the comments section. Let us know your thoughts. Have you picked up this palette? And what are your thoughts? Because I do really think that the formula is good. I just don't feel like these tones are going to work for everyone. So I'm just curious to hear your guys' thoughts. Sound off down below. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me in today's video. I hope you guys all have a wonderful day, and I will see you all in my next video. Love you. Bye.